U5 Entertainment, U5 Worldwide, giving thanks to the fans and the people that support us. U5, we did it.
Yeah, we back, everybody. What's up? What's up? What's up? This is Radio U5. You're here on U5 News Flash. You see on your screen who we got today. Oh my goodness, you're in for a treat because we got none other than Chief 69 and the Hizzy. Chief 69, what's going on? How are you feeling, bro?
Hi, how are you? Thank you so much for having me.
Yes! All right. Well, let me go lower that down. Chief 69, man. So welcome aboard to U5 News Flash. I've been checking out your vids and seeing your history. And you know what? I think that you and I perhaps should share the secret with America on why we look so young, right?
Yeah.
I see you rocking the Puerto Rico shirt. So what part of Puerto Rico are you repping?
I'm repping the South Bronx, that part.
That part of Come on, Puerto Rico. There's no South Bronx in Puerto Rico.
NYC.
NYC.
Yeah, that part.
All right. So, are you Puerto Rican? I guess I should ask.
Yeah, I'm Boricua by blood, biologically. But I've never lived on the island and only visited one time.
You visited one time. All right, so that's a good segue into this because it's interesting. You know, I'm also born and raised in New York City, just like you. You mentioned that you were born in Brooklyn, born and raised in Brooklyn, or rather born.
Raised in mostly the Bronx. After moving to Kissimmee, Florida, we moved back to the NYC boroughs, and I lived in the Bronx the majority of my childhood and adult life.
Okay, all right. Well, I tell you what, Kissimmee I'm familiar with because my mom used to live over there in Kissimmee for a bit. And so what part of the island were your folks from? What area in Puerto Rico your folks
And
from?
PR, I had a grandfather who used to live in Old San Juan. He's not alive no more. And I had family, from what I've been told,
Uh-huh.
that lived in scattered, like in Bayamon, Fajardo. I don't really don't know.
All right, all right. But you know that your roots are in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Well, I guess the first question, and you probably had this question directed to you before, is how'd you come up with the name Chief 69? I mean, were you born in 69? Is that your year of birth?
Nah. So I'm a millennial.
Okay.
I was born in '91 actually. Um, it's a long story, but basically, my dad used to do graph. He used to b-boy and MC, sort of like I was involved in all of the hip hop elements. He did it in the early to mid '70s to maybe like the mid '80s. He was involved with street gangs and hip hop culture, and me knowing that from a early young child, I was always had an interest in visual art, in poetry, and rap, stuff like that. And one day by like middle school, I started like really getting into graph naturally. Me and one of my brothers. One of my brothers did more bombing than me while I was actively in the graph world. He was more of an active bomber, and I was more doing permission walls and making money from it. But long story short, one day I just thought of it, because I saw how people would have the numbers at the end of their graph names, like Stay High 149, Coke
Right.
2, all these different people. And one day I just thought of it like Chief 69. I like how that sounds, and I ran with it for years.
Yeah. So what does chief mean to you? Because it means something different depending on the context or whatnot. I would say for myself, when I hear chief, my military mindset jumps right in because I served our wonderful country for a number of years, and I was actually a warrant officer in the army. And when you become a warrant officer two on up, they refer to you as chief. This
Oh
is
wow.
the headgear we use as a chief warrant officer in the U.S. Army. So, but chief is something different to you. What do you
Yeah.
think? What is your representation of chief?
So I mean, it's complicated. When I got into hip hop culture, being a Boricua, I always wanted to initially have that interest in my roots of who I am. And when you look at the Boricua people from the island of Puerto Rico, the native inhabitants are the Taino. So at one point, I kind of argued between cacique, which is the name of their chiefs, and chief,
Uh,
but it didn't really mean nothing more than that. It wasn't. It was just thinking of a name that sounded cool, which is like like what rappers do and graph
right.
writers. And you need a cool nickname in that world, in that environment. But this
Sure.
is like many lifetimes ago.
So you said you were born in 91, Chief 69. Tell me, what was it like when you first were introduced to hip hop? And I know you had mentioned your dad was involved, with the
Yeah,
streets and the gangs and that sort of thing. And people kind of tend to forget about how dangerous it was in Brooklyn in the 60s going into the 70s, and especially in the south part of Brooklyn.
yeah.
Um, but tell me, how is it that what was it because of your dad that you got involved and started getting interested and curious about art and the hip hop culture?
So what's interesting is like raising me and my siblings. It was always in the house because he's around your age, and basically we would hear the Big Pun, the Wu Tang in the house. We would hear the Nas, the Jay Z. We would recite rap lyrics to the latest stuff coming out. And I
Okay.
also remember by the time I moved back to New York City, to the Bronx, when New York, I could say in my generation, for millennials, it's the last version of what the real raw, grimy, gritty New York that
Hmm.
people think of nostalgically. That New York doesn't exist no more. New York is different now. But the city still has its issues, but it's the culture is different from borough to borough.
I
From my
see.
father's generation to my time, you hip hop was more street orientated, and even the way that people did graph or rapped or did expressed the elements, it
Right.
was it was more of like on a conscious awareness or activism type of angle, or an angle of we're just gonna a youth rebellious culture. We're gonna be super creative and we don't care what nobody says. And a lot of this is connected to the culture even for Puerto Ricans or New Yorkers from New York City. It's just a
Right.
part of our culture. You're raised with this, so it only makes sense that I became a walking stereotype.
Well, I tell you what, the origins of hip hop in the Bronx, granted, all right, um, a lot of it was more on the positive tip, like all the introduction to calling women, BITs and NIG this and NIG that. I mean, that came later on. Like back in the days when you
Yeah,
listen to Curtis Blow, Run DMC, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, The
Yes!
Treacherous Three. I mean, all these old groups, it was all about positivity. Even when in the early 80s with the Fat Boys and
yeah,
Step the Sonic and even Public Enemy, yeah, they were controversial, but there wasn't a lot of vulgarity and there wasn't a lot of it expressed and directed towards women and minorities and whatnot. And it was more of a wake up call. I mean, if you want to think about the woke movement, hip hop culture is the woke movement. That's like when you're waking
basically,
up
yeah.
and you're learning about, is it true that, when you look at the political spectrum, which I've been involved with as well, and you think about the 80s, what happened in the 80s? Well, you had don't do drugs, right? And you
Yeah,
remember that commercial that come on, this is your brain on drugs, and you have, eggs being fried on the pan, and so while you had that occurring, you had a drove of drugs that were being introduced into our neighborhoods, crack cocaine, right?
yeah,
You had the AIDS was just surfacing in the 80s, people talking about that. And then you still had to contend with what happened in the 60s with Dr. Martin Luther King getting assassinated. And it was
yeah,
just a mess, not just in Bushwick, Brooklyn, or the Bronx or Queens, but here in DC, not far from where I live, it was the same thing. And so it's unfortunate how the dollar sign started, were flashing in the eyes of these producers and the executives. Say, man, there could be some money made out of this hip hop thing. And
yeah,
what's unfortunate is that they wanted to go and push the whole, the hip hop into something more, a little bit more deeper and darker. You know, with like the gangster rap and all that was introduced from the West Coast and whatnot. I don't know. Do you think that hip hop could have been successful without the curse words and the vulgarities and the wars that occurred? And I'm not talking about Roxanne Shante, UTFO.
Yeah.
I'm talking about like those sorts of wars between the West Coast and the East Coast. You know, Suge Knight and Tupac and all these organizations that were battling out. What do you think about it?
I think you mentioned a very important point that from the 60s even to today, there's a lot of moving factors across the world. A lot of different things were happening when hip hop was birthed. You had the martial arts movement, you had Bruce Lee, you had that going on in the 70s to the 80s. You had the whole Reaganomics, you had all the political stuff, the crack cocaine being introduced not only to America but across the world. And there's a lot of different theories on that and how black exploitation, prison industrial complex, there's a whole lot of different things that were going on. And what the hip hop generation did, because this was invented by youth, they were like teenagers or young adults or even younger, and it came out of the street gangs, but while all this stuff was happening, so it was there from the beginning. And this is why in the culture you've always had a lot of different views on different things. Like the earliest rappers used to DJ at the same time. They used to go to the parties. Or the earliest b-boys they were hanging out with stick-up kids, or they were stick-up kids.
Yeah.
Even the early graffiti writers, not a lot of graffiti writers were even into hip-hop. Some of them were into rock and stuff, because you have different generations at the same time. It's really interesting.
And we had all capabilities. Some people can do artwork, but they couldn't rap, or maybe they can get involved with turntablism, which is another element of hip hop. Now, my understanding, there were just about 5 elements of hip hop. Now you're hearing 9, 10, 12. I disagree with these people extending what hip hop is. We need to go and keep it for what it was when we started. Graffiti, I believe it was the first element of hip hop was graffiti. And then you have the beatboxing, you have the turntablism, you had the break dancing, and you had the rapping. Now they want to add more to it. I heard KRS-One talk about these other elements, trying to be all philosophical and whatnot on that. It's like, it's no need for that. It's like, maybe they're a byproduct of hip hop and its origins, but let's not call them, the original elements, because it didn't exist at that point. That's the 5 true elements of hip hop. So you got involved with which part of hip hop did you get involved with first?
The first was graphic. I've been a writer since I initially fell in love with the culture, and then rap, and then b-boying, and then even the educational aspect, because I was a freelance teaching artist all across New York City. I used to teach about the culture of hip hop. I used to do lectures even in universities, high schools, public schools. We would do hip hop presentations, me and my b-boy crew. We would go to schools, have auditoriums filled. We would even be paid for it too. What I did, which was smart at that time, even though for me looking at it back in retrospect, because I'm not in that world no more, I don't endorse it. But what I did that was smart as a young person was I made money from it. At least I used it to my advantage, instead of being taken advantage of.
Well, that's the thing. So you've got graffiti artists that are out there, vandals that are out there tagging and spraying wherever they could, trains, buses, cars, anything that moves, anything that's not moving, they don't care. They're gonna tag it. They're gonna have their name on there, and they would never do like a permission wall. Like if I were to invite them over here to Virginia to do some artwork, and it's not illegal, whatnot, they don't want no part of it. They're like, no, graffiti artists, we doing things this way. That's not. Those are artists. We're graffiti artists, we're taggers, and so like they've got the line right there in the sand. Yeah, they've got the line right there in the sand and said, nah, rated, that ain't me. That might be you, but it ain't me, whatnot. But you know, to each his own. You've got other people like Banksy. You've got other artists all around the UK. You see what's going on now with people using scaffolds going down the sides of buildings and doing artwork and tagging and piecing. It's like it's getting outlandish, and that brings me to the question as far as hip hop and how it's evolving. Do you think that it's evolving in the right direction?
So I became a Christian actually, and I came out of hip hop culture around 2018. I got saved in 2016 from seeing demons for like a week, and I was not looking for Jesus. I was not trying to be a Christian. I just wanted to live my best hip hop life, and God interrupted my life. And then a year and a half later, I had demons casted out of me connected to hip hop culture. I had to dance demons out that came in through b-boying, that came in through graffiti and through Zulu and the whole hip hop affiliations that I had. So when I had that experience, I renounced and denounced graffiti. I totally walked away from it. It wasn't until like 3 or 4 years later, after that, that I decided I can do art again, just out of a hobby, you know.
Right.
So me looking back now in retrospect, it's a really important question because 10 years ago, I would have told you I'm all about the original elements, the culture, you know, peace,
Right.
love, unity, having fun. It's not hurting nobody. It's being creative. But my answer now would be that at the root, spiritually, hip hop as a culture, every single element, it's against God. So I do believe that God gave us the gift of art visually and poetry and music and rap. There's nothing wrong with these things. These things have intrinsic value. You can make a living from it. You should be able to express it, and you should be able to do it in a respectful way. Um, but I don't believe that the culture that it was good at one point and then it
Right.
became bad. That's what I used to believe.
So you think that inherently it was always bad?
Yeah.
Now, when this was occurring, and we're going to get into that, you know, 2016, whatnot. Did you feel like you were being trying to be pulled back into that environment or that mindset, as far as like the call of the streets? Because
Definitely.
I lived that life. I lived the 80s in Bushwick, Brooklyn, and it was crazy.
Yeah.
It was everything I had to contend with. But when I joined the military, you know, I was forced to go and change, right? They break you down and they build you right back up, right?
Yeah.
But you always have in the back of your mind that, you know, rated U5 was still in the back of my mind. It's like, and you know, and if you was needed, and I had to snap my fingers and be that person, I could do that. I'd be like, all right, now you're talking to rated, and that's a totally different character, different language he used. I mean, different characteristics, whatnot. And so, do you feel like you were kind of like being pulled left and right between the two? And did you have that internal battle that's going on within you?
More than internal, it was spiritual. It was external as well, because once I became Christian, I had certain opportunities that I had to decide. I was in a fork in a road because I had just recorded a song with Grandmaster Caz called Bronx Cheer. I recorded a song with Divine RBG, with Tragedy Gaddafi from Queensbridge. I had a potential opportunity to actually potentially blow up with the rap thing. My dad told me one day randomly, because I used to live by Corey Guns in the Bronx. He told me one day randomly, oh, this guy wanted to record a song with you. I don't know if that was true or not, but I had opportunities once I became Christian to still bomb, to still do graph, what I did for like a year was actually Christianizing. And I was selling like hats on the street. I was still doing murals and whatnot. But I went from writing Chief 69 and I started writing Praise Jesus.
Wow.
And I started doing that.
And that's interesting because I just had Jesus Saves On, but hold that thought right here. I just want to share a little bit of clip of that interview that you had with DJ Malik here and see and just listen to what
you know. Now, man, the graffiti, the mural is burning up, man. People getting shot in hip hop. They calling that hip hop, we know we call it recording artists pretending. So what is your thought process, you know, as the generation that we have to take over? Bam, them started, which really supposed to stop gang issues. We're just supposed to brought peace, love, unity, and having fun. So come on, what's the solution, man? What's the solution you can give on this?
The solution is what we had in what we call the golden era of hip hop. In the golden era of hip hop, yes, you still had the MCs talking about the street lifestyle, because that is a reality. You cannot act like that does not exist.
Right,
however, you have to show diversity. Right now on the radio, because it's owned by, you know, Channel 1 and Radio 1 and Viacom and television, the frequencies that are more accessible, unfortunately don't have diverse topics in their music. This is not only in hip hop. This is in rock. This is in pop. This is in so-called R&B, which is a damn shame.
I like that so-called.
We went from what's going on and fight the power to Versace. You know, that's literally the transition we've made.
Well, you went from a mirror being graffiti into creating b-boy, because we was out at LaGuardia University, and this is my first time I had seen Chief 69. We talk, we build, but he went out and did the elements, man. He just wigged me out. He gonna bust a rhyme before he leave the show, but or hip hop, a real hip hop lyric. But what made you make a transition from the mirror? Because I know they teach us we need to know all 5 elements or one or the other. But how did you make the transition to go from the mirror into the writings in your flow?
Well, it's all connected, of course. By the time I got to high school, I started b-boying, seeing kids do it after school. They were reluctant to teach me at first, but I said, you know, I need to learn this.
That's a New York thing.
Dance created by my people. You know?
So there, I mean, there was you having that discussion, talk about how there needs to be more diversity. And how things have changed and morphed from what originally was in hip hop to now. And you know, you've got some big names. Unfortunately, you know, when you look now, I'm kind of agitated and upset at the fact that there are a lot of people that we looked up to. You know, when I was growing up, looked up to people like Africa Bambaataa and a lot of folks that are in the news now for bad reasons. And it's kind of like shoving a dagger right into my heart, because it's like, and these are the folks that we followed, you know, when it comes to hip hop and the culture, whatnot, and seeing folks that, you know, grew up in Marcy Projects, grew up in East New York, grew up in Bushwick and other places, you know, the Bronx, even Staten Island, Queens, you know, Long Island, all these places, and now it seems like a lot of the dirt they did is coming back, and then now our generation, my generation as well, your generation as well, are looking at us and saying, "Man, these are the folks that we looked up to, and this is what they were doing. How shady, how disgusting, and how repulsive it is." Do you understand about the duality of man? The duality of man.
Enlighten me.
All right, so in the spiritual sense, the duality of man is you know, kind of like in our inert nature. In our inert nature, we have the capability of doing good, and we have the capability of doing bad, and all of us have it. I don't care if you're the darn Pope. I don't care if you're, you know, leading a mega church. Whoever you are, everyone has that inertly within us, and have control of that, right? We can go and have control over these temptations that we have, or we have control over these triggers, you know, that make you do things, you know, these impulses and whatnot. And that's when you show signs of maturity, that you are able to do that, because it's still within you. I mean, and so, you know, when you're talking about 2016, when you've got these demons that are controlling you, telling you to do this, making you do that, my question is, was that more of that, like I said, in your mind battle, like, you know, Chief, man, you know, go take that, or, you know, Chief, tag up that truck, what you waiting for, or was that more of like something, or was it more of a demonic thing that was trying to use you for other purposes other than graffiti? Because, you know, quite honestly, a demonic force is going to take over you to go and do graffiti. It's a little bit of a stretch for some people to think about. But a demonic force that is going to control you to go and harm another person, or do wrong to another person, or commit a crime, or commit a sin, right? that's different. That's something that people go, yeah, I can see that happening. So I want to kind of like bridge the gap when you talk about these demons. Can you elaborate on that just a little bit?
Yeah, basically it was like a week. I was literally seeing demons while I was awake. Like I'm looking at you, and as transparent figures and shadow figures. And I was never been so terrified in my life at that point. And I had to literally stop everything that was going on in my life with that encounter. And I've never been the same since. This was not something that was fabricated in my head. I've always been straight edge, was never into popping pills, drinking, or smoking, even though I've had that around me my whole life.
Me too.
From you name it, everybody. It's in hip hop culture, it's in NYC. You can't get away from the smell of weed some places. It goes to the walls. But yeah, I mean, I had that encounter and I had to face it, you know, and that might not mean anything to a lot of people. So there's a lot of people every day, they have supernatural experiences. It doesn't mean anything and they go on with their life. I made that decision to take that experience and call on the name of Jesus, and then I stopped seeing stuff. And I realized, okay, I have a choice to make. And that choice, with a lot of prayer and getting a Bible, was realizing, okay, I can't stay living the same way. Now, as far as graph itself or like the elements of hip hop, these are creative expressions. Is it a sin to be creative? No. But there is a spiritual root behind these expressions. And that's what I get at when I say that these things, spiritually, it's against God. My talent has never gone away. You know, I have free will, and if I wanted to, I could bomb right now. I'm not going to, you know. But yeah, that's that.
So when you were involved with graffiti, because I know a lot of the graffiti heads are waiting for this, you know, this discussion or this topic or this question. And by the way, for you guys that are joining us, this is Rated U5 Enterprises. I'm here with Chief 69 on this official interview right now, getting knee deep into this discussion. Extraordinary young man, born in Brooklyn, but raised predominantly in the Bronx. And I wanted to find out what are the crews that you represented when you were involved in graffiti.
Yeah, so when I was at the peak of my hip hop life, I was the chapter president of the NYC Mecca chapter for the Bronx Boys Rocking Crew, or TBB. If you ever watched the old graffiti movie Style Wars that shows Cap One, before that movie, he used to be a part of TBB when he was a little younger. A lot of people don't know that. And Rocksteady Crew, where you got Crazy Legs and Ken Swift, Frosty Freeze, those b-boys from the 80s. Rocksteady Crew actually came out of TBB. Crazy Legs used to be in TBB. And then he went off to venture on his own and formed RSC with a whole bunch of other people. But so I used to represent that crew. I used to be a part of the Universal Zulu Nation. I was a chapter leader for Chosen 33 chapter in Bronx River Projects. Wow. That chapter has been active. It might even still be active today. It was active since like 95 in Bronx River.
So my brother used to be involved somewhat with that. Now, whereas the Zulu Nation, were the 5%ers a part of that, integrated within that, or is that something totally separate?
So 5%ers, they're an offshoot of the Nation of Islam. 5%ers started like in the late 60s. Even though they're not a part of Zulu Nation, some of their beliefs, their ideology is actually taught in Zulu Nation. So when I joined Zulu Nation, I had to actually adhere doctrinally, like to what they believe, and I had to receive some of what they teach from 5%ers, from Nation of Islam, Nation of Gods and Earths, a whole bunch of other different movements, like Dr. York and the Nuwabians. Some of their beliefs are taught as well.
Dr. York. Now, he was Muslim,
Dr. York formed his own religion, actually.
Right.
And Nuwabian.
I'm so glad you mentioned this guy, but who were the ones that called each other God? Yo, God, yo, God. Who were they?
It was mainly 5%ers or Nation of Gods and Earth. Rappers like Eric Rakim, from Eric B. and Rakim, Busta Rhymes. These are 5%ers. Wu-Tang members, they're 5%ers.
All right, so for you guys that are listening right now, he mentioned a name that I haven't heard in a long time. It was Dr. York, and if I remember correctly, growing up in Bushwick back in the late 70s along Bushwick Avenue, it was predominantly Muslim community, and you walk down the block there. There was this group called Passion, and Dr. York was either the leader of the group or a part of the group, and they were a Muslim group, and it was a little bit of an offshoot, because if you figure most of the Muslims, they were very, very centered on the Islamic faith, and seeing that sort of kind of Motown feel with this group called Passion, which Dr. York was a part of. I don't think it was really well received by the overall Muslim community. So I don't know how far he went, but Dr. York was certainly a part of that. And I've got that the CD here, Star Wars. I was just looking at it a few days ago with Cap, the others and whatnot. And there's a lot that's going on with hip hop. I remember you've got hip hop through the years, and these DVDs that come out and start talking about some of the hip hop movement, DVDs with turntablism, a lot of the big events that occur overseas, and so now going back to you, how was your relationship with your family when you were involved with graffiti, and how is it now that you've kind of
walked away
from that? Yes.
So when I was in the hip hop world, I was embraced by my family. I was loved. My brother was a really active bomber in the Bronx. My dad used to write. My mom's cousin was a writer, used to bomb since like the 80s. I actually have a bunch of relatives who are writers, which again is not a shocker. I'm Puerto Rican from New York City.
Is your dad still with us?
Yeah, he's still alive. He's
still... Do you kind of kid with him and say, "Your dad, what you write? What you write?"
Nah, he's still active in hip hop, connected to certain people. But I walked away. I made that personal choice. I have a lot of family members who are still in that world. That's their choice. At the end of the day, I love them, and I thank God for them.
Wow. Well, we've got one other question for you before we go and check out this clip of you. I believe that you were doing some of your fancy footwork when you're breakdancing. But describe graffiti in Orlando. Were you involved with graffiti there in Orlando, Kissimmee rather?
Nah, it wasn't until I was maybe a teenager that I started doing graph. I've done legal work and illegal bombing in NYC, New Jersey. I've even had my art in. I actually wrote this down. We're talking like almost a decade ago that I used to be involved. I actually had to write it down. That's how you know I'm getting old.
Don't say the old word. That's a dirty word.
I did it seriously like 2009 to 10-ish to 2018, graph. And the only reason I really stopped again was that spiritual experience. And I tried to Christianize it like a year and a half. I've collaborated on art murals and canvas with artists like Snake 1, Coke 2, Germ, Bomb 5, Lava 1 and 2, Caster, Cyanide, SMC, Too Easy, Jesus Save, Sloan, Cornbread even. I did a canvas with him. I've sold commissioned art to clients, and I had art displayed in galleries and other types of places. Exhibited in Vermont, Connecticut, Japan, New Jersey. But mainly, most of my art and hip-hop experience and adventures were in New York City. So that's that.
Okay. Well, let's check out this clip over here. And I think that you might have, I don't know if you were dancing in this one.
So beautiful. So beautiful. Give it up one more time for yourself. It's a nice day. So, I represent TBB, the Bronx Boys Rocking Crew. Many of you may have never heard of that. It's one of the original B-boy crews from hip-hop origins. Hip-hop did not start in the 80s, but the 80s is when it went around the world. That was what we refer to as the exploitation or the golden era, depending on how you look at it and who you talk to. But, starting in the 70s, really. Coming out of the whole civil rights movement and the whole activist thing that was going on with Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, American Indian movement, Vietnam, a lot of things are going on that led to the whole b-boy thing. TDB used to be in this park right here, Pole Park. We used to have Chrome, DJ Chrome, we used to have Beatman, we used to have a lot of these early b-boys, Spy, Beaver, Zulu Kings, Salso, Rockwell Association, Mighty Zulu Kings. These are all the other crews that were around the area. And when TDB broke up in '79, Rocksteady Crew came out of TDB. Rocksteady Crew hit the world by storm, and y'all know the rest.
Wow, Rocksteady
So
Crew.
we're gonna do a little performance demonstration for y'all, whatever you want to call it. But before we get down, I want you to actually know what you're looking at, because a lot of people, they don't know anything about the dance. They say it's nice, it's acrobatic, but you don't know anything about the dance. And what we're doing is called rocking, going off, b-boying, or b-girling. As practitioners of this craft, we do not call it breakdance. That is a media coined term. We do not call ourselves breakdancers. This is created by black and brown youth who call themselves rockers, b-boys, and b-girls. The same way if you do graffiti, it's not really called graffiti, it's called writing, and you're a writer. And you don't write poems and essays and stories, but respect to that, you write your name with style. If you're an MC, you don't call yourself a rapper. Right? That get the point. So, hit that. Y'all can make noise too when the music is going.
Alright, Chief 69, gonna get busy. Here we go. 69. I tell you what, can you still do those moves, man?
I could do some of them if I wanted to, but I might not get up.
Goodness gracious, man. I'm thinking like you do all those moves, man. When you're done, you probably popping some Tylenol or something.
Yeah.
So that was a huge movement. I remember back in the days grabbing those, cardboard or linoleum rolled up and walking through the neighborhoods, battling other folks all around in the neighborhoods. And I thought it was so fantastic, this movement, And and there's some outrageous feats that are occurring in that sort of style of not breakdancing like you say, but rocking or whatnot. What about up rock? And shout out to my boy Ray Casanova out there, one of the pioneers of up rocking. But have you ever been involved with the up rock as well, or is that part of it?
Yeah, so like in my later years of b-boying, maybe like, because I stopped in like 2016, maybe from like 2000, I want to say like 4 or 3 to 2016, I was up rocking as well, which is a dance that preceded. It came out before b-boying. Right. And that really was initially from the gangs in New York City. Brooklyn and the Bronx mainly historically had up rocking, but they had different styles of doing it. Some people were Latino and they were mixing like Latin hustle moves with or salsa dance moves with the party rocking moves. And then other people who may not notice, when you used to join a gang back then, sort of like now, you would get beat up to join the gang, like to join a Bloods or Crips. There would be something that was called an Apache line, which is a line of people you had to walk through. They would hit you with stuff, and you had to survive that. And if you did, you joined the gang.
Right.
And so when they do this dance move or this form of dance called uprocking, it's a dance where they're like hitting the people on the Apache line. And it's sort of like b-boying. You dance to the breakbeat part of a song, the part of the song where you hear the percussion more. That's where the b-boy would go down. But uprocking, it was mainly to funk music and that type of sound, because you're talking late 60s. James Brown, for example, you know. And again, there's a spiritual aspect, believe it or not, behind all that, because
You
James
know-
Brown, Bootsy Collins, all those groups that we love,
Right.
when we do those dance forms, they was getting high in the studio and recording the music while under the influence. So there's a different spirit driving even how the music is being made. It's no different than a rapper saying lyrics that get you all agitated and provoked to do a drive-by. If you ever hear gang members, they go do drive-bys, they're playing music to amp them up to do the crime. It's spiritual.
You remember the movie The Warriors?
Yeah.
Yeah, The Warriors. That was a big movie as well. So tell me about and b-boys. I mean, is that still a thing, b-boys, or has that terminology been excluded? Is not used?
It's still a thing. It's worldwide. They've had battles for years. There's people who make a living right now, believe it or not, being a b-boy, and they're like in their 30s, in their 40s, in their 50s. Some of them teach at schools, and they do what I was doing. A lot of freelance teaching work. They'll do lectures. They'll go across the world. They'll battle for cash prizes. They'll also feature in commercials, music videos, and they'll make a little money doing that. The same way that there's some graph writers who make money by just doing murals, or there's some MCs who make money by selling music, and then there's other people who they're more underground, they're more raw. They don't care about the b-boy battles, but they do the dance form. They don't care about commission murals. They just want to bomb. They don't care about recording songs. They just got bars, and they know how to spit. If you put a beat on, they'll freestyle, and they'll be lyrical.
Yeah, once in a while, I still come across videos of beatboxers, and people think that's died out. It hasn't died out, man. There's people that's really, really good. I mean, back when we were growing up, we grew up with Dougie Fresh, Bismarcky, and also folks like the Fat Boys as well. But now there's a lot of folks out there that are still carrying that element of hip hop, and that's kind of neat to hear. Well, any scary or alarming times when you were writing graffiti? What's the scariest story that, like, when it happened, you was like, man, that could have been the end right there, or that was maybe a fight or a scuffle, or maybe some mishap. Any scary moments with graffiti?
I mean, for me, by the grace of God, God kept me from getting into crazy circumstances, bombing. I've heard of stories of people being pushed off roofs, people getting into accidents and falling from heaven spots and different things. Nothing like that ever happened to me, except just the adrenaline rush of, maybe the cops are gonna catch me. I was actually only arrested one time for graph, when I did graph. And it actually wasn't, I actually thought I was doing a permission spot. And then the boys pulled up and I got arrested. So it was just, it was over confusion. But when I was in that world, I had fun bombing. I used to enjoy the adrenaline rush. I used to enjoy as much as going to do a paid mural, because you want to see what can I get done. One time I was in, I think, Harlem. I don't even know the name of the park anymore. It was some random park I went to for a music video. We had 2 minutes, and we did this guy's graph name for his music video. I did stuff like that, like without even thinking, looking back. I could have lost my freedom over stupid stuff. But at the same time, it made me a part of who I am today. I've had a lot of interesting experiences.
Well, I know you don't have any children. Are you married, or were you married?
I am married. I've been married right now 5 years, and it's one of the greatest gifts in my life, next to salvation in Christ. And it takes work, and it's a blessing, and that's more valuable than the accolades I have from my past or anything, because a wife is a gift from God to make the man the person he's supposed to be.
Yeah, they said that when it comes to marriage, marriage is about each of you, giving 60% from him, 60% from her, and then it winds up being 50-50 when it's all said and done. And there should be no one above or below each other. You guys should be just equals. And so yeah, congrats, 5 years. That's tremendous. Hopefully you have many more. And how does she feel about your past and involvement with graffiti and with hip hop? And is she fine with it? Is she kind of like, honey, you need to stop that? Or, man, that's cool. I can dig that.
Yeah.
What's her take on hip hop?
She doesn't come from that world. She was born in Madagascar, raised mostly in France, raised as a Christian girl. So she's known the Lord her whole life. Whereas me, I'm like the prodigal son. I went out, wasted my substance, came back, and then God is my father, gives me a ring, puts a coat on me, and says I'm his. It's a very different dynamic. I don't come from the church. I don't come from Christianity, and then I'm in that world now. What's beautiful is my wife is actually a worship artist. She's very talented. And I'm the visual artist. I can't sing for nothing, but yeah.
Now, for you folks that don't know, Madagascar is the island off the coast of which side of Africa? Left or right? I believe it's the right. Is it?
The right, yeah.
And most, maybe the kids, but now they probably think, oh, Madagascar. I remember the cartoon, the movie, whatnot. But Madagascar is a pretty interesting island. I lived in a couple countries in Africa, Zimbabwe and Rwanda, and traveled extensively throughout Africa, and I can tell you that apart from Madagascar, the only other interesting island I can probably think of is maybe I don't know, I think maybe New Zealand for the original creatures that they have there, because in Madagascar you guys got the lemurs over there, right? Those
yeah, it's very interesting. And even what's interesting on the whole hip hop thing, it's there too.
Really?
Hip
hop Madagascar?
Yeah, it's there too.
Have you been there?
Not yet. But I live vicariously through the internet for now.
You got to make a trip there to her mother country. So yeah. And so what any regrets that you have? Any regrets that you had in the past regarding hip hop, or maybe things that you hadn't completed and want to get complete?
Yeah. No regrets. I know my life experiences made me the part of the person who I am. For some of people viewing this or listening, you're only willing to even listen to me because I actually came from that world. There's people who are fans of hip hop. They're enthusiasts of rap music. They like b-boying, but they're not from that world. So whatever they have to say about it doesn't really matter. I actually came from that world, but I left it. And it's the grace of God I left unscathed. It's like someone leaving a gang. When someone leaves a gang or leaves prison, you're never the same. Some people regret it, but I mean, it makes you who you are, So I don't regret it. Sometimes I wish I got saved earlier, but I think if I didn't experience those things, I wouldn't be able to even preach about certain things. So God uses all things.
So are you involved in rapping, Christian rap, or anything?
Not as a priority. I can rap whenever I want. I have recorded with my wife, and just randomly here and there, just as a hobby. Just like, okay, I feel like spitting today, so I'm gonna record a verse, and
That's pretty interesting. And have you ever encountered that gentleman I interviewed for the last segment, Jesus Saves?
Yeah, I've met him over the years at many graffiti exhibitions where I had my work at, came and sold, and I've actually even freestyled with him, like outside of galleries.
Really?
I even did a mural with him. We did a mural with me, him, and Too Easy. forget the name of the place. It was in Brooklyn. It was for like a graph store. That store might not even be around no more.
It might be Scrapyard or something like that. One of those stores that, you know, there's this. I wanted to ask you, when you're out there promoting hip hop, you ever heard of this organization or this building in Manhattan called The Door? The Door.
Yes, I used to dance at the door when I was in high school.
No way! Are you
Um,
serious?
B-Girl Rockefeller and B-Boy Quickstep. I don't know if they still do it, but years ago they used to teach their b-boying for free to anyone who came in. And when I started going there, I was maybe like not a freshman the year after in high school, and I started going there, and but I wasn't taking the culture seriously. I was just doing it for fun. And then over the years, I stopped going. But yeah, I know about the organization. I used to get free dinner there too when I left.
Yeah, I used to go hang out with a lot of U5 members, Sony, Audi, Niker. We used to go out there to the door and get involved with all the things they did there. It was pretty interesting. Let's go and share this last clip before we wrap up this interview. I don't want to take up too much of your.
Do b-boying in a Christian way, and about 2018 I had demons casted out of me and I couldn't do it no more. The videos you're about to see are just random videos that people still have saved on Instagram 7.5 years later, and it shows you visually I was about that life. I was that guy. And I don't look at it with nostalgia. I look at it with remorse. And so should you. You shouldn't look at it and be like, it's demonic. And when I say hip hop is demonic, we're talking about the culture. We're not just talking about rap music. Because rap can be Christian and it can be done right. However, Christian rap does not replace worship and praise, which is more than music, it's a lifestyle. We have many teachings on this. We have a playlist on our YouTube channel called Hip Hop Exposed, with some of our content and the content of other believers that is available on the internet, teachings and sermons and more that can help you to understand that hip hop is demonic. And I share this video to show you I was authentically involved in the culture. I was not someone speaking from the outside. I was not simply someone who was an enthusiast or a fan of hip hop culture. Watch these videos. I used to dance. I praise dance now as the Lord leads me, but I was so pridefully involved in this dance. This dance was all about the next move or trick that I could learn.
Wow, that is pretty deep right there. Because number one, you grew up around it because of your dad, people around you. Then you felt like you had that supernatural experience. Fortunately, you were able to escape that, rebuild your life as you have, and shared a lot of really personal, deep, the words and the way you express yourself. I mean, looking at you, you look like a person that never been involved in any of that stuff.
Yeah,
When I see these videos and I see this guy, and now what you've become, how you've been able to manage to get yourself out of that situation, not only in your mind but also progress and push through that. Now you're reaching back, and this is very difficult to just reach back and start not contesting the hip hop in itself, but telling folks that there is that side to hip hop that can absorb you. It can leech onto you. It can grasp you and never let go. I mean, you see
yeah,
that unfortunately with a lot of these elite. rappers and singers and entertainers that they get soaked up, and it doesn't have to just be drugs, it doesn't have to be the woman.
Exactly.
It's for the fame, the glory. They want to be out there in the limelight. They want to live that life. They want to be driving the big Bentleys and getting all this money and getting whatever they want. But you see, it doesn't, in the end, it doesn't matter how much money you have. You know, it doesn't matter how popular you were, that you were, even if you were a pioneer in the hip hop industry, if you're behind bars, you know, where's your legacy now? Like, what can you go and pass to the next generation, other than this big mistake, this big mistake that you've committed or whatnot, and now your legacy is it's really ruined. But is there a manner in which we can go and salvage the hip hop culture, the true hip hop culture, from the very, very onset and its early beginnings, and maybe kind of filtrate that out and push it out? And what organizations are doing that sort of thing?
I would say, if you're a creatively inclined person, whether musically, visual art, let's say you're a writer, your viewer or listener of this video, you're more than likely a writer, right? Whether you did it in its heyday, or you still do it as a hobby, or you go out and bomb, or you do commission work, I want you to look at it this way. All you care about is your name being everywhere, or writing letters in different fonts. That's how I used to look at graphics now. Like, it was different fonts. Like when you go to Microsoft Word and you type up, to me, that's graphic. You're who has the most fonts? Who has their name the most places, the most ups? Who's all city, all world, all country? That mentality, what is it really worth in the end? It's self-seeking, self-glorification. And you may not want to hear this, but the truth is it's private.
Well, I mean, everyone wants to leave their legacy. Everyone wants to leave their mark. And that just goes back into our true nature, right? Because we were created. I believe that we were created, right? And so all that has already been intertwined and ingrained within us, like, you know, to go and play, so that we can continue having, you know, our children and carry on, you know, generations thereafter. And so when the internet came out in the 90s, you know, I thought to myself, wow, we lost Sony and Slick, man. We lost our brothers. Like, what is it that Jay Torres can do? What can Rated U5 do to go and carry that name forward indefinitely? And then the information age came, you know, with the internet and all that. And I saw that perhaps this is a way to do that, you know, and it's not to thump my chest, it's to go and just simply incorporate remembrance, because most of us can't even you know, name our great grandfathers, or, you know, or our great uncles or whatnot. We don't know who they were, but here's an opportunity for them to not just be remembered, but people can go back and, you know, reach into the archives, you know, or scour the internet and learn more about our true history. And you know, it's really incredible that what's occurring now in this day and age, where we're finding lost civilizations that people kind of like looked at you like sideways, like lost civilizations, and all these different things that we're finding out with the technology that we have now and the savviness that we possess now. So with the hip hop culture, I think that it's going to continue to evolve. I mean, right now you go on YouTube, you can see people showing you how to go and do a throwy and a tag, and, you know, and everything else. And also, on the plus side, is giving people an opportunity like yourself to go and share your story, not only the positives but also the negatives, and what to look out for, and to be very, very careful, because you can get wrapped up into it and others have fallen. So Chief 69, I really, really appreciate, you know, your time. This was an awesome interview. Very, very deep discussion. Very, very personal discussion. I think that all of us have a point in our lives where we're fighting the demons within ourselves. At this point, I just wanted to go and just leave the floor open to you with any shout outs that you have, anyone you want to name out there. It's your time. It's on you.
Yeah. I'll share a little bit of what I wrote. I did wanted to share, you know, just to share a little bit with the audience. Again, a little bit of what I left, what I walked away from. You know, I was featured in many outlets actually to promote my dancing, the art, the music. When I was in that world, I was featured in places like Brooklyn Hip Hop Festival, Bronx 12 Noon, South by Southwest Festival in Austin, Texas. I was in the New York Times. I was in Bronx Times. I was a part of the Red Bull Mass Appeal Art Exhibition, collaborating with like 10 street artists and Eric Hayes for Rite of Passage. I did art at NYU University. I danced on stage actually with Curtis Blow, Cuban Link, Dead Prez, Rebel Diaz, even did guest speaking and teaching and presentations on hip hop culture in all boroughs of NYC.
Wow.
I worked with the Queens Library with Ralph McDaniels from Video Music Box. I did that like the last year that I was in hip hop. And I don't share that, you know, to be like, look at me. I'm sharing that again just to emphasize. I was heavily involved in that world. I ate, breathed, sleep, woke up. Everything was hip hop.
Right.
Everything was how can I go do graph today? How can I go b-boy today? What can I rap about today? Who can I pay to be on a song? What like I was always scheming and plotting, and it was never enough. It was never enough. No matter what graph stuff I did, I wanted to do more. No matter how much I went to go dance, it wasn't enough. I would dance sometimes 4 to 7 hours a day, throughout the day, randomly. I would, again, it was an addiction, an unhealthy addiction, spiritually, mentally, emotionally. And again, I don't want anyone watching this to feel like you're being condemned by this Christian guy randomly, because you're not. You know, the fact is that God loves you. Whether you feel like you have artistic ability or not, I know a lot of graph writers don't hear this, but God loves you. Jesus loves you. He wants you to serve him. That's the greatest message that I could share, because it trumps the message of graph. The message of graph is you writing your name, you writing your crew names. That's not gonna last in eternity. The Bible says God is gonna destroy this world. So I think his message is trumping your graph ups. Right. None of this is gonna exist. But I do agree with you that, like your podcast and many history books, even the Bible, we should tell the good, bad, and the ugly. We shouldn't hide history. We shouldn't hide what really happened.
Right.
Like, I love it when the government releases CIA files like they recently did with JFK. Tell us the truth. Let's look at it from all angles, because then you can make an unbiased, critical opinion about things.
I just say with the truth. Like, let's just get the truth.
Yeah.
And, you know, look, you know, I was a presidential candidate. I ran, you know, people like, what? Really? Yes, I did, you know, obviously we didn't win, but the point was made. And my thing is, like, I'm tired of seeing that pendulum swing back and forth. Same old thing. Democrats, Republicans. And I think that Americans would just rather just give us the truth, you know? I think we should just start with the truth, wherever that might be. And it might be something that's going to shock the system, right? It might not be something that you were even brought up with thinking, or maybe you're, you know, what you're thinking now. It might be completely different. But I'd rather die knowing the truth, and I'll be comfortable with that than living a lie, whatever that, you know, may be.
Yeah.
But Chief 69, you know, for a person that is as young as you are, you've accomplished a great deal. You've been around a lot of big names that people are never, you know, afforded, given, you know, your upbringing and whatnot. And, you know, I commend you for what you've done. I've been looking at your videos for the last few days, and I think, wow, you know, this guy's, he's been around. And, you know, when you're naming names like that, you have mentioned also out there in the Bronx, you know, Bomb 5 and all the others, the FX crew, shout out to them, shout out to my cousin GA and others out there. Yeah, it's extraordinary. So what happens now? Are these folks still reaching out to you, or they say, okay, Chief 69 is done, let's move on. I mean, do you
Yeah,
phone call?
I think I'm just written off like Lauren Hill was in the 2000s. There was like she went crazy.
All she needed was that one album. When she did, she dropped it, and look, you know, yeah. So
I'm the Lauren Hill of the Elements, basically.
that's what's up. Any last shout outs for you before we end this?
Nah, I want to shout you out, and I appreciate you giving me the space to just share my story. Like I said, I believe stories are important, and I still love art. I still do art. You know, I'm forever going to be an artist. If you are, whether you're a writer or an artist, do art. Art is good. Art makes the world beautiful. No one likes ugly blank walls, anyways.
All right, well, there's Chief 69 right here. You heard it from him, the man himself, Chief 69. That's what's going on. This is Radio U5. Peace out, and look forward to the next episode. Who knows who that'll be? But thanks a lot, Chief 69.